What's up, Wildside besties and baddies? I'm Bailey.
And I'm Chelsea, and we're here to walk you through the wild sides.
From homicides to hosticides and everything in between.
We're so glad you're here, so buckle up
and enjoy the ride. Hey guys, it is our last episode of the year.
Oh man. Ooh, someone is going to be so mad if you don't cover a Christmas murder case for this one.
Who's going to be mad?
Brandy's going to be really mad.
Was she like, you better tell Bailey that she better cover Christmas case?
Yeah, more or less. She was like, so if you're taking any suggestions, I mean, you don't have to, but if you are, then, I think it'd be really great for you to do a Christmas murder case, because I also agree with Bailey. I really don't like historic cases. And I was like, y'all can all kick rocks.
I'll kick rocks. And did she at least like the case you presented last week?
It wasn't her favorite.
It wasn't her favorite. Well, this isn't going to be anybody's favorite either.
Well, is it your favorite?
So there were lots of cases to choose from, and at first I was going to do a massacre case, the Grapevine Massacre, and then I found this case, and Chelsea, you know me, like there are some things, and it even surprises me, there are some cases that hit me really hard more than others.
Right.
This is a Christmas killing case, and this is a real hard one, and I don't know why, but it's just really stuck with me. And so this is the murder in the case of Kashmier James.
Kashmier James. We have a kid, I think it's at the high school level. I think that's right. Sometimes I forget where kids are, if they're junior high or high school. And its name is Cartier, the jewelry. And I love that so much. And that's kind of what makes me, that's just what I think of. I'm like, this is such a sweet, fun name.
Kashmir. You know, I always think of Led Zeppelin when I think of the name Kashmir, right? But I looked, and I don't know how I got as many pages together as I did, because there is absolutely zero coverage on this case. There's no podcasts, no YouTube videos that I could find. There's no documentaries, nothing. And so I found court documents, obviously, news articles, and interdepartmental correspondence in the police department that was posted in a PDF form. So that's where I got all of my information.
Oh.
Okay. Are you ready for this?
I am.
Okay. So Kashmier James, affectionately known as Cash, was a 25-year-old mother with a bright future living in Los Angeles. Born October 18th, 1985, Kashmier embodied wisdom beyond her years, living by the motto, reach one, teach one, it takes a village. A graduate of King Drew Medical Magnet High School, she had recently secured a nursing job and was eagerly saving for a home with her partner, Christopher Jackson, and their cherished 3-year-old daughter, Nevaeh. On Christmas night 2010, after celebrating with family, Kashmier stopped to visit a friend in Manchester Square, a decision that would unfortunately alter her family's life forever. Kashmier made her way to the Hyde Park neighborhood in LA and parked in front of 1723 West 85th Street. Around 10:20 p.m., Kashmier and her friend DeAndre Woods were catching up, standing on the street at the rear passenger door of Kashmier's parked car, where her 3-year-old daughter was sitting inside. So she was just stopping to see a friend. Her daughter was sitting in the back seat. It was a really quick, hey, how are you? Merry Christmas. They'd known each other for a really long time. And then she was going to be on her way. Kashmier and DeAndre were longtime friends, and they were catching up on the holiday activities for the day. And then Woods got distracted. He noticed a blue SUV with dark windows driving past them and slowing down. With no time to run, as the doors of the SUV swung open, Woods went to embrace Kashmir and saw a flash of light, a gunshot. Kashmir exclaimed, "Oh my God," before collapsing into Woods, causing both of them to fall to the ground. Woods, seeing a man with a firearm approaching, scrambled to his feet to try to run, but fell on the wet ground, dislocating his shoulder. As more gunshots rang, Woods got himself up and took off towards Western Avenue.
You know what's really weird to me is I literally almost interrupted you and said, "Is this bad that just because I think that they're in LA and standing outside that they're going to be victims of a drive-by shooting? Isn't that so stereotypical of me?" Like, what is that though? Why are drive-bys such a thing?
Well,
In
we
these
don't know that this is a drive-by.
well, that's true. But why are they such a thing? Just on a side note, why are people drive-by shooters? I think that's so weird.
Yeah, but we don't know what this could be. It could be a number of reasons, right? Seconds earlier, as Derek Jefferson walked through the dimly lit streets of West 85th Street, he heard gunfire that shattered the silence from across the street. Instinctively, he sought cover, diving into a nearby bush. From his hiding spot, Jefferson could see a man pointing a gun at a woman in a dark blue SUV with dark windows and gleaming 24-inch chrome rims idling nearby. Inside the vehicle, Jefferson glimpsed two men before the engine roared and the SUV sped off. Emerging from his hiding spot, Jefferson rushed toward the woman, who was now collapsed on the pavement. Blood pooled beneath her as he realized she had been shot in the head. Though she was unable to speak, her trembling hand gestured desperately towards the silver Chrysler 300. Following her gaze, Jefferson saw a small child, just a little girl, hysterically screaming inside the vehicle. Without hesitation, he lifted the girl from the car and carried her to safety, handing her over to a nearby resident. Returning to the wounded woman, Jefferson was struck by the horrifying reality that she was dead. The woman we now know as Kashmier James had been shot multiple times. She had gunshot injuries to her legs, suggesting that she had already been down when the final rounds were fired, with the fatal shot to her neck and to her head.
What?
In the heart of Hyde Park, a grisly scene unfolded. This 25-year-old mother, Kashmier James, lay dead in the street, surrounded by 13 spent shell casings. Kashmir's 3-year-old daughter, who had just witnessed the murder of her mother, was quickly taken to the 77th Street police station, and next of kin was notified. It was there where Nevaeh was turned over to her father and Kashmir's partner, Christopher Jackson. Kashmir's family, who had just spent the holidays hours earlier with Cash and Nevaeh, were devastated and absolutely bewildered. How could she possibly be dead? They had no idea how this happened or who had done it. Cash's wallet and purse remained untouched, ruling out robbery, and there were no known enemies. Due to the horrific nature of Cash's death and her 3-year-old daughter being a witness, it didn't take long for the community in Hyde Park and the city of Los Angeles to draw widespread condemnation and calls for justice. Just 2 days later, on December 27th, a candlelight vigil was held at the crime scene as family, friends, and the entire city of LA mourned.
So it wasn't a drive-by.
Nobody knows. There's no information.
Well, you can't be shot that many times in a drive-by.
I mean, then it wouldn't really be a drive-by, would it?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm perplexed.
Yeah. Despite witnessing parts of the attack, Derek Jefferson, remember the guy from earlier who witnessed this and jumped in the bush?
No, he was just out. He just was an
He
innocent
was just walking.
bystander.
Yeah. He was just walking down the street, happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, right?
Okay.
And he saw this all go down, but hid in a bush. And so he had told police that he didn't get a good look at the shooter or anybody in the vehicle. Like he didn't have any information besides it was a blue SUV.
Okay.
That was unfortunately a bad break for detectives. Aside from spent shell casings, there appeared to be no direct witnesses to the murder, of course, except for Kashmir's 3-year-old daughter, who horrifically experienced this, but she was 3. She was unable to provide any details needed to
Yeah.
find, who killed her mom.
Right.
With no forensic evidence, there was no forensic evidence or clear witnesses. The case seemed to be spiraling into another unsolved tragedy.
Now, when Cash was hit by whichever bullet, whether was the bullet that injured her or the bullet that eventually would kill her, she fell forward onto her friend DeAndre.
Yes.
And so DeAndre didn't really see anything because she had fallen forward onto DeAndre.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, according to like the court records and what I could gather, he was kind of more towards the sidewalk side, and she was more towards the street side.
Right.
And
Right.
so when this SUV came down the street and shots were being fired, she fell into him.
Mhm.
So she got maybe a little bit more of the brunt, but
Uh-huh.
there was just no clear indication, but it seemed like she had been targeted.
Okay. But no, there was nothing. DeAndre didn't, there were no wounds inflicted.
There were mixed reports for that. Some said that he had like minor injuries. Some
Mhm.
said that he had none other than like the dislocated shoulder, but all of the reports were that he was able to run from the scene. So he wasn't injured or maimed enough to, you know,
Okay.
for it to slow him down.
Okay.
In the weeks following Cash's murder, Kimmolita Kim Evans, which is her mom, tried to engage the media to gain leads. Standing before the cameras at a news conference, Kim struggled to find the words to express the depth of her grief after her daughter's tragic murder. Voice breaking as she said the only prayer she had, "The only thing I can pray to God is to continue to give me the strength to be able to deal with it." It was a heartbreaking moment, one that echoed the sorrow of countless parents who have lost their children to violence.
Right. Oh,
Cash's daughter, Nevaeh, who was just 3 years old, was in the back seat of the family car when the shooting took place. And that was one of the things that gripped the community so much, was that now there was also this horrific event, and this child saw everything,
right.
right?
Yeah.
With incredible innocence and raw emotion, in the same news conference, Nevaeh actually said, "Please help my mommy, please."
Baby. Oh, goodness me.
It was a plea that would haunt anybody who heard it. Cash's mom was not the only one who was really turning to the community to help gain more traction for figuring out who killed Kashmir James. Her longtime partner, Christopher Jackson, also joined Dominique DePrima, I guess is a DJ or a radio show host there in LA. He ended up joining her in studio to ask the public for help solving his partner's murder. He set out a plea to, anybody listening to the radio show, and he said, quote, "I can't. I cry so much I don't think I got any more left in me. I got to wake up to her now," talking about his daughter. And he said, "I have been doing it now all by myself."
It's awful. Oh, it's just awful. And I think what's always sad to me about holiday cases is I don't think you'll ever be able to enjoy a time that's supposed to be so special and joyous without this bittersweet sting of
Oh, for sure.
what happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally the happiest season, arguably the happiest season of the year, turns into like the biggest trigger every year, all the time.
Well, and then also, like I said, bittersweet in that, I mean, thank goodness his daughter was not a victim as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, oh, I just can't imagine that duality of mourning, but also being so overjoyed in the same moment, like mourning the loss of your loved one, but being thankful for the safety of another loved one.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. For sure. Now, this is what kills me, Chels. The investigation into Cash's murder would stretch over several years. It would take years for this stuff to unravel. There were very scarce leads early on because there was no evidence. They had those 13 shell casings, but there were no eyewitnesses. There was nothing else there. For nearly 7 months, numerous tips failed to uncover whoever was responsible for the murder, whether it was one shooter, multiple accomplices, what have you. However, law enforcement persisted, and again, they continued to leverage community outreach. Public rewards and media attention played a huge role in encouraging information sharing. And this is going to be the first kind of piece in this case that starts coming together.
Well, and if you think of like a county as big as we're gonna say LA County, like, oh, okay, well, you had the description of a blue SUV. That's like trying to say it happened in a white Buick in Diamond Head, Mississippi. You know what I mean?
Right?
Like
Yeah.
everybody drove a white Buick there. I mean, it's like, okay, that's super helpful. Thanks so much.
Or like a white pickup truck in the
Right?
South.
In the South. Like, okay, well, luckily for us, we have 12,208 registered in a like half a mile radius. Like, okay.
Right? So 3 days after the murder on December 28th, the LA City Council offered a $50,000 reward in the case, while the County Board of Supervisors offered $25,000 for information leading to the identification, apprehension, and conviction of the person responsible for the murder.
Yeah.
So that is stirring up some leads, and law enforcement, the only angle that they had in the meantime was working with the vehicle, right? Because that was all they had.
And can I also say, I'm sorry, maybe because you said that you're triggered, I'm getting triggered by osmosis. But it also makes me mad that we're having, that law enforcement ends up having to incentivize somebody to come forward with information. Like it's money that shouldn't have to be spent when people should
Sure.
just do the right thing to begin with. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
now we have families that are ruined and we have budgets that are being blown because people can't act right. And it makes me mad.
So that is super valid, but I think you're not going to be as angry at the end when we've kind of unpacked this super complex thing and you say, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense."
Well, I'm talking about general cases where it doesn't make a lot of sense, where we're having to pay all this money out for people to finally be like, yeah, I knew some information, but I figured they'd be, incentivizing this information. So I held out till I could cash in on it.
Yeah.
Like, shut
Yeah,
up.
I mean, it's unfortunate. It's
Shut up.
unfortunate. Shut up, just shut up, shut up, shut up, just shut up, shut up.
Girl, get your in here and let's rock. Ah.
Yeah, yeah. So as I said, the only angle that police had to work with was what, Chelsea?
I don't know. I was too mad ranting.
the vehicle. That's the
Oh,
only lead they had.
yeah, the vehicle that everybody else has in that town.
Right, right. So, what investigators decided to do, and they decided this early on, but it takes a lot of manpower and hours to pull video surveillance from like nearby areas. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
oh, it happened in this neighborhood. There are gas stations in this vicinity, in this direction. So let's go through each one and see if we, by chance, see a blue SUV matching the description and go from there.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. I would hate it if my job was a lot of it was luck. I would hate that every day where you're like, let's hope that we get a break today. Let's
Right.
hope that
Yeah.
maybe a surveillance camera somewhere shows
Yeah.
us something. That'd be very stressful to me.
And to complicate it, they didn't even know specifically what type of SUV to look for. There was mixed reports. It could be either a Chevy Tahoe or a GMC Yukon with rims, like either one of those with rims.
Did I tell you about that time that Lucas had fake rims from Walmart that he like clicked onto his Mazda or Mitsubishi Mirage? And we drove out to a friend's house that lived like way out in the country. And as we were like driving down the bumpy dirt roads, like all of his like Walmart rims started flying off of his car.
Oh, Lucas.
And so like our friends behind us, I think ended up picking like three out of the four rims up off the side of the road. And they were like, I think these are yours. I think these belong to you.
Lucas. Was that the same time that he got his barbed wire tattoo?
Oh, probably. His buy one strand of barbed wire, get one strand of barbed wire free tattoo. Yeah. Yeah, about this.
Lucas. So yeah, they don't know if it was a Chevy Tahoe or a GMC Yukon, but they know it's blue. It's one of those. They're very similar vehicles. And after like hours and hours and hours of pouring through surveillance, they finally found a vehicle that matched the description, and it was traveling southbound on Western Boulevard around the same time of the shooting. So the direction and the time lined up.
Okay. Lucky. Getting warmer, getting warmer.
Yeah. In January of 2011, law enforcement ended up actually being able to identify a vehicle matching the description provided by that witness, Derek Jefferson. And it turned out to be a blue GMC Yukon, and they actually found it parked near 110th and Hobart Streets.
Hobart?
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 When running the plates, investigators found that it was registered to the father of an individual by the name Lamar McKnight. And they learned that, unfortunately, Chelsea, the vehicle was repossessed. So by June of that year, of June 2011, when all of this is happening and transpiring, they found out that it was actually repossessed in June. And it no longer had any rims on it. So they were like, we don't know if this is actually the vehicle, but there was a number 24 marked on it, indicating that it once had 24-inch rims.
Okay.
Okay, so that same month, this is where things start getting exciting as far as we are actually starting to get warmer to what happened. Okay. So in June of 2011, so this is about, 6 months later, investigators would have their first tangible break in the case, again, as far as identifying the individual of the blue SUV, potentially. But what really started to be a big break in this case for them was a witness came forward. So on June 22nd, a witness emerged. Now, a little bit of disclaimer. There in the court documents, they refer to this witness literally only as witness X. Nobody knows who this guy is.
Okay.
Okay. And the LAPD interdepartmental like note memo that I got my hands on, they referred to witness as witness one. So there's no way to know if they're the same person, but based off of what I could gather, I think it's the same individual.
Okay. Yeah.
So I just went with witness X.
Yeah.
Okay. So witness X comes to police and he says, I was actually present Christmas night in the Hyde Park neighborhood and I saw everything. He said, not only did I see everything, but I know who the shooter is and the 3 other people in the SUV. What's the face?
How many months after this shooting did this witness X come forward?
6 months.
What? Why does that bother me so much? Maybe I get mad at my own procrastination. I'm like, this is what happens, Chelsea, when you procrastinate.
I mean, to be fair, you would probably take about 6 months to come forward as a witness because you'd be
That's
like,
what I just said.
yeah, you'd be like, did that really happen 6 months ago? Wow, I didn't realize it.
That's what I just said. I think it's because I would have been like, I am going to march down to that office on Monday, right after I get all these things taken care of and my Target stuff returned. I'm going down to that office.
Yeah, so that's probably what witness X was doing too. So he identified the shooter as a dude by the name Darnell Houston. So not only did he identify the shooter, but he said Lamar McKnight. Does that name sound familiar?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was the dude. It was like the dad. It was registered to the dad of Lamar McKnight.
Huh?
Car was. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Lamar McKnight, Ezekiel Simon, and Derek Williams.
Okay.
And these 4 individuals were rumored to be a part of the 111 neighborhood Crips.
I just don't think I like LA, just in general.
Now, investigators finally had a lead that this might have been a gang execution.
Did you
But
ever,
why?
when you were in high school, did you ever try to figure out how to do the blood symbol?
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta be careful throwing them hands, though.
I know. I feel like that was a thing when we were in high school. Like, ooh, I know how to do the blood symbol.
Yeah. What was I saying?
I don't know. Been some stupid gang there in LA.
Maybe. But they needed to find a link, right? Because as far as they knew, Kashmier James had absolutely zero affiliations with any gangs whatsoever.
Well, she doesn't
Okay.
have to, not necessarily. They just do crazy drive-bys sometimes. They don't even care who you are or that you have a cool name.
Or that your 3-year-old sitting in the car and it's Christmas Day.
Mhm.
So in August, so after this witness came forward, fast forward to August, and investigators were able to get a search warrant. And they searched Lamar McKnight's residence and they uncovered 4 rims in the garage that matched both Jefferson's description and those visible in the surveillance footage. So they found a little bit more actual evidence. Around the same time, police also searched the home of Derek Williams, who is one of the men named by witness X. When searching, now this is where things start getting like, okay. When searching Williams's home, they found a notebook titled Young Hoodsta. And under the bunk bed in his bedroom, officers discovered a drawing of a woman with her eyes crossed out,
What?
her body marked with an X, and 3 lines drawn beside her, which indicates evidence linking to the crime and potentially the notches indicating the number of victims.
I mean, again, moral of the story, keep a journal.
Right. Although this was the first step in the investigation and hopefully conviction of the men responsible for murdering Kashmir James, investigators still needed more. It wasn't going to be enough. They would require witness X's ongoing assistance. After the arrests of Darnell Houston and Lamar McKnight, Los Angeles Police Department detectives Stacy Zimkowiak and Roger Guzman employed Witness X as a confidential informant.
Mm.
He was no ordinary confidential informant or operative. In fact, he was a former member of the neighborhood Crips himself and knew Darnell Houston, the guy that he said was the shooter, when they were in prison together in the mid-90s. And he knew Darnell Houston as Lil Pan.
Lil Pan.
Lil Pan.
I wonder, kind of serious question. Do you know how people get out of gangs? I feel like it would probably be harder to get out of a gang than it would be to get out of a cult.
Yeah. I imagine that there's a lot of a Venn diagram overlap with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I've heard that I think it depends on like what kind of gang it is, and if it's like a smaller like neighborhood gang or if it's like an organized US type gang.
Because I've always heard like blood in, blood out, right?
Yeah.
Working with gangs, I've always heard blood in. Like you have to shed blood to get in, and the only way you're getting out is if your blood is shed, like till death do us part. But that's true. You kind of forget that. And really, we should one of these times cover like what gangs are and gang activity, because I think it's a much more tangled web than just like you have Bloods, you have Crips. Like there are a lot of like minor
Oh,
gangs,
there's so many.
neighborhood gangs, and
Yeah.
with different
Yeah.
codes of conduct, if you will. Like
Yeah.
that's
Well,
true.
I have been wanting to interview like a reformed gang member, a former gang member. I just don't have any of those connections. Like, I don't personally know somebody who was in a gang, or else I would have been like, "Hey, can I interview for our podcast?" So if you guys know anybody who was in a gang,
Yeah.
if they would be willing, like, they can be anonymous if they want to.
Right. Even if it's just like your cousin, Uncle Tommy type of thing. Cousin
Yeah,
Tony.
I would love to, and I'd also love to interview, like, somebody who, like, works with gangs and does, like, gang interventions kind of thing, right? I would
Dr.
love
Penn
to.
would know.
Huh?
I wonder if Dr. Penn would know.
Maybe,
We might want
maybe.
to reach out to Dr. Penn because I bet you there's
Yeah,
quite a big gang affiliation down in the Houston area. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Anywho.
yeah.
So getting back.
So, getting back to Witness X, he agreed to work with police and he agreed to infiltrate the gang and secretly record members in order to hopefully get a confession to who was responsible for murdering Kashmir.
What was he getting out of this? Was this just out of the goodness of his heart?
Well, there could be some reward on the line for that.
Oh.
Okay, so at some point, Chelsea, over the next several weeks, homeboy Witness X wires up and goes undercover to infiltrate this gang. Do you know how risky that is?
Do you know how much
It's
I
like,
would talk? Do you know how nervous talky I would get if I were wired up?
yeah, you'd be like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah,
Hey,
blah."
hey, 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 guys. Hey, did I say hey? I'm not saying hey. Are you saying hey? And I'm not weird. Are you weird? I'm weird. Is it hot? I'm hot. Is it
Is it
fine?
hot here?
Whew, yeah. Okay. Anywho's, so no, go first. You go first. Like, I would be such an idiot. They'd be like, okay, she's fired.
Like she's either on drugs or has a wire right now.
Right.
So, over the next several weeks, Witness X secretly records conversations with him and Darnell Houston. And in one of the conversation, he gets on tape Houston brazenly saying that he was involved in that Western murder. So the kind of street, the area, the
Okay.
Western murder, and confessed to being the gunman, and then listed the gang nicknames of his accomplices: Bar, who was Lamar McKnight, Baby Beefy, which was Derek Williams. Chelsea's face. I'm so sorry.
Baby beefy, beefcake, beefcake.
Yeah. Okay.
Can't with gangs. I think I hate gangs as much as you hate cults because they have such dumb names.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you got Eloch, which is Ezekiel Simon, and then Mr., who was Markel Parker.
Okay.
In an unsettling boast, Houston described how he was training younger gang members who, according to him, were not contributing enough to the gang's violent operations. He recounted taking a group of younger members of his gang, of his Crip gang, on an earlier mission the same night outside of a church, where one of them fired 17 shots at 7 rivals with a 9mm handgun, but somehow miraculously missed all of them.
Oh my gosh.
Frustrated with this failed mission, the gang returned back to the hideout to rearm before heading to Western Avenue. Houston claimed that McKnight drove the SUV, setting the stage for the ambush, and then demonstrated to Witness X how DeAndre Woods had used, quote, Kashmier James as a human shield, explaining with total indifference how she was repeatedly shot. He said after the murder, he dismantled the gun and discarded it into the ocean, just so proud of himself, saying that it would never be recovered as evidence to implicate him. But during this recording, he said that he had suspicions about one of his accomplices, Baby Beefy, thinking that Baby Beefy was going to cooperate with law enforcement, and said, I'm going to have to down Baby Beefy. So he was just like, I got to take this kid out because I think he's going to snitch. While he's being recorded by an old friend of his who was in a gang and who is being recorded for the police.
Okay. You're going to have to down Baby Beefy, just like you down one of those beef and cheddars over at Arby's.
Yeah. So police get this, right? And they're understanding that Darnell Houston is mentoring younger members of the gang and just spewing and molding these young kids, in graining them with violence and blind loyalty to take them on missions to teach them how to commit murder.
Yeah. I don't get it.
And so finally, from this, investigators did have enough to file charges against the defendants. So on August 28th, 2011, the district attorney's office filed murder charges on Darnell Houston, Lamar McKnight, Ezekiel Simon, all because of the information provided by Witness X, along with the items recovered in searches that they had done.
Is that not its own form of grooming?
It 100% is, in my opinion. It 100% is, in my opinion.
Because I feel like we do not use that word to include a wide enough theme or subject matter, if you will, because in my eyes, that is no different from sexual grooming. Like violence grooming that's got to be a thing, right?
100%. 100%. And so when I worked with the juvenile, what?
Population.
Yes, but the juvenile justice center, the whatever. I worked with kids between 12 and 17, and most of them were in gangs. And it was like kind of gang intervention. It wasn't officially gang intervention, but it was like we were doing like anger replacement training. It was literally like trying to help them rewire, right? This kind of mentality that they had. And I would get threatened all the time of like they were gonna like if you better be watch your back, like we're gonna wet you up. That's whenever I learned what wet you up was because I was like, what does that mean? And like I literally had one kid who was like, you better be careful, like we'll wet you up. And I looked at one of the other kids and I was just like, what does that mean? And he was like, and he just laughed and he was like, it means that they're gonna do a drive-by, they're gonna shoot you. I was like, but what does that have to do with me being wet? I was so confused.
What does that mean? Is it like blood is wet? Like
Yes,
spill your
yes.
blood?
Spill your blood. Yeah. And so that's how it started off. And then after months and months and months of working with them, they were like, I got you, Miss B. Like, you can walk into my part of the hood anytime. Like, you're welcome. I'll make sure nobody touches you. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I say all of that to say my exposure to that young, from what you're talking about, these kids had the most horrific lives.
Yeah.
Okay. And gangs were treated them better and more as a family than any other system they've been exposed to. School systems, family systems, law systems, court systems, social systems. The gang system made them feel important. It made them feel seen and validated and heard. And that is the type of loyalty that we're talking about, right? And of course they're being molded and groomed and preyed upon because they're vulnerable. So yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you that that's why do you think they recruit them off the streets in bad neighborhoods when they're like 13, 14, 15 years old?
And I mean, like, let that sink in. I mean, take a pause, listener, and let that sink in. These kids find more security and more acceptance in a gang, in a violence-centered gang than they do in a school system, in a church community, in the local YMCA, in their family unit. You know what I mean? Like, come on, guys, we got to do better.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay, where was I at? Yeah, so the DA officially filed murder charges for Darnell Houston, Lamar McKnight, Ezekiel Simon. A fifth man, Derek Williams, was also arrested and interviewed by detectives, I think it's Zimkowiak, and Guzman for being an accessory after the fact. At that time, detectives did not believe Williams was in the SUV at the time of the shootings, but they suspected he might have helped dispose of the rims, and that's why he was like an accomplice after the fact. During the interview, Williams admitted being at the gang's hangout on Christmas night, but consistently denied any participation in or knowledge of the shooting. When the detectives were informed that the wheel rims were not found during a simultaneous police search of the house, they allowed him to go home. So they let him go. And then a month later, now we're in September 15th of 2011, after Houston told Witness X that because Witness X is still being a confidential informant for police, right? And he even did interviews with some of them like in jail, like he was taken into jails and like put in cells with them to operate as this informant. And in another conversation with Darnell Houston, so Houston says that Williams was actually in the Yukon during the shooting. And so from this information, the district attorney then files murder charges for Derek Williams also. So they interviewed him, let him go. Then with Witness X continuing to operate and record these conversations, Darnell places him in the SUV. So the DA decides that's enough to file charges on him as well.
Go on, DA, go on.
Yeah, the DA's like, not around here. And so Williams was again interviewed by detectives Zimkowiak, and Guzman. And this time, the atmosphere was very different. The detectives told him that he had been identified as being in the SUV and that he needed to come clean. They basically said, "We can't make any promises, and you need to be honest with us, right? Because you're going to have people essentially turning against you, and you need to be honest with us first."
Right.
They were like, "What happens on Monday is up to the district attorney, and they'll decide if charges are filed or if something else will happen to you."
Right.
And then Williams finally shifted and said, "All right, I'm going to keep it 100."
He's going to keep it real.
He's going to keep it real. He eventually admitted to being there, to witnessing the violence, and feeling trapped in a world of gang, loyalty, fear, and regret.
If he had been alive, or not alive, but if this had happened in today's culture, he'd have thrown his hands up and he'd been like, on God, I'll tell you what happened.
He'll be like, "This is what happened, no cap."
No cap, on God, on God.
So everything essentially stood still while Derek Williams began to share what had happened on Christmas night the year prior. On December 25th, the night of the murder, Derek Williams found himself in the back seat of a blue GMC Yukon. He claimed that he was a reluctant participant that night, a decision that he would later come to regret. And he said it all started with a heated argument. McKnight and others were upset, drunk, and angry, complaining that some members, including Williams, were, quote, "not putting in work" for the 111 neighborhood Crips. As McKnight raged about their lack of contributions to the gang's activities, that's when he ordered Williams, Simon, and Parker into the SUV. Williams, knowing McKnight was armed, complied to his demands.
Now, I'm assuming that when you're talking about that they were not contributing, that means that their body count had not been high enough. They hadn't been killing enough
I'm
people.
literally get
Okay.
the next sentence.
Okay.
Yeah. Detective Simkowiak, pressing for details, said, "What is putting in work for a gang?" And Williams said, "Killing people."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what everybody was mad at, that these young kids in this gang weren't putting in enough work, aka they weren't killing enough people.
Do we want to talk about the irony of work ethics? You know what I mean? Like, if you would work as hard for your gang as you would for your school, your academic achievements. This is so wild to me. And maybe my, I don't know, privilege. Maybe my privilege is showing, but I'm like, so you can apply hard work ethic and killing people for your local gang? This is wild. I don't understand this lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand it, right? Williams continued in this interrogation that as the night wore on, he felt conflicted. He didn't want to kill anyone. And he was like, "Nah, I'm not feeling it." But despite his hesitation, he ended up kind of being complied and forced into the back seat between Ezekiel Simon and Markel Parker.
Well, yeah, they probably were like, well, that's always your answer. You're always not feeling it. That's why you don't contribute. That's why you haven't been working hard because you never feel like it's the right time.
Yeah,
Like I can see how all that, again, I can see how you get manipulated into or coerced into a situation like that.
sure, sure. And so he ended up getting into the car, and then Lamar McKnight went behind the wheel, and Darnell Houston was in the front seat, passenger seat, armed and ready. The five individuals drove to the Hyde Park neighborhood, which was turf for a rival gang. They were on a mission to put in work for their 111 neighborhood Crips, Darnell Houston opened fire at DeAndre Woods because Houston thought he was a, quote, tramp. And tramp was a disrespectful reference to members of the 8 Trey gangsters, which was their rival gang.
Come again? The only tramp I know of is Lady in the Tramp and tramp stamp tattoos from 1999.
Well, now you know of a third category of tramps, and that is the nickname for the 8 Trey gangsters by the neighborhood 111 Crips.
So they mistakenly thought DeAndre Woods was a tramp.
Was, yes, a member of the 8 Trey gangsters. And again, all of this according to Williams. DeAndre Woods allegedly moved Kashmier around using her as a body shield as she was repeatedly shot, while he received minimal injuries and took off running. Houston attempted to kill Woods, thinking that he was a tramp, and killed Kashmier James because she was, quote, a tramp associate. So basically, Kashmier James, who had 0 ties to any gangs, never in her life, not even close, was killed because not her, but DeAndre Woods was mistakenly identified as part of a rival gang, and they took her out just because they assumed that she was a, quote, tramp associated female.
All because he lived in a neighborhood that was probably either affordable for him or the neighborhood that he had grown up in, and that was his home. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So
and Woods had no gang affiliation.
That's
either.
what I mean.
None.
Just because they, again, probably whatever class, I don't know what socioeconomic class they were in, but just trying to live their life, but maybe not in the best neighborhood. This is dumb. I quit.
I know. This is why this case bothers me. I have been thinking about it several times a day since I researched it and typed it up, and it bothers me. Just day in and day out, it bothers me.
Innocent bystanders. Just because you're living on a street, living your life trying to wish somebody a Merry Christmas. Get out.
Yeah.
Get out. Get all the way out.
And so Williams continues this, confession, if you will, to investigators in this interrogation. And he said that he felt powerless and that he was trapped in a situation that was beyond his control. Now, that's fair. From what I know of gangs, these kids who get recruited in, especially these younger members, they don't really have a choice. You know what I mean? Like, yes, they have a choice. Everybody has a choice.
It's child abuse, guys. It's child abuse.
Yes.
I don't care what you say. It is child abuse.
I agree with you.
I will die on that hill.
And Williams was like, I couldn't just hop out and run because he probably would have been shot too, right? He said he was far from home. He was Chelsea, he was 15 at the time.
That's what I mean.
15 years old.
That's what I mean. I'll die on that hill. I don't care. It's child abuse.
Yeah, I agree with you. He said it was the first time he'd ever found himself in such a violent situation. He felt paralyzed by fear and confusion. He said he couldn't stop the carnage, but couldn't escape it. He said, I just didn't know what I was supposed to do. I think as a 30-some-odd-year-old woman, if I was in the middle of a vehicle and somebody was doing a drive-by, I wouldn't fucking know what to do.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So this is really kind of what investigators needed, and it would be 4 years before those involved in the murder of Kashmier James were brought to justice. Simon and Williams were teens when the crime occurred, but they were charged as adults. And I have a lot of mixed feelings about that. I just have a lot of mixed feelings about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ezekiel Simon, who was just 16 during the crime, was the only one who took a plea deal, and he pled no contest to voluntary manslaughter and attempted murder. His sentencing occurred on August 27th, 2015, and he was given 29 years in prison. However, both Lamar McKnight and Derek Williams, their trials began in August of 2015. None of the three appellants testified in their own defense, and it was a little confusing for me, but I think Lamar McKnight and Darnell Houston's trials were kind of done as one, and then Derek Williams's was done separate. And in the court documents, they referred to it as like orange trial and like blue trial. So I don't know. It all
Right.
happened, we'll say what it is.
Right.
But what prosecutors really push for in the trials is that this was a calculated crime.
Right.
Evidence, including witness testimonies, ballistics, it tied Darnell Houston, Lamar McKnight, and Derek Williams and Ezekiel Simon to the crime. DeAndre Woods obviously was hesitant to testify, so the prosecution made sure that the jury understood the crime scene. They painted a picture that it was an area that was known for high crime rates, and was a part of the territory claimed by the 8 Trey gangsters. But again, they made it clear that Kashmier James and DeAndre Woods had zero affiliations or involvement with any gangs at any point in their life.
Right.
This was absolutely nothing short of a merciless execution for ego and turf.
Right. Right.
Detective Eric McDonough, a seasoned gang investigator, delivered chilling insights into Los Angeles gang culture during his testimony. He drew on decades of experience in hundreds of interviews and described the 111 neighborhood Crips' violent ecosystem where crime defined identity and murder was the ultimate status symbol. He detailed the gang's bloody rivalry with the 8 Trey gangsters, and how members, including defendants Houston, McKnight, and Williams, cemented their affiliations through tattoos and calculated behaviors, such as murder. Detective Eric McDonough tied Kashmier James's murder to the 111 neighborhood Crips, noting that it was a case of mistaken identity that cost her life.
Yeah.
He testified that this murder wasn't a random act of violence. It was a deliberate, audacious mission. He said that these guys who were part of this neighborhood Crips gang had to drive 30 blocks into a rival gang's territory on Christmas night to execute a murder. He said it shows they're pretty crazy because of all of the steps that they had to go through. And he highlighted how this kind of act stoked fear and enforced the gang's reputation among rivals in the community alike.
Right.
He also spoke to the the scratch marks beneath Derek Williams's bunk bed, hinting that they were personal tallies of killings. And in the end, he pretty much said that I don't think that Williams was kind of an innocent bystander. It seemed like he was really into this lifestyle. But I think once again, it's all groomed, right? They're groomed to be into this.
Exactly. Well, and then I think for those of us, myself included, just trying to like broaden my horizon on a situation like this, I think we have to also understand, I mean, a lot of this stuff is cradle to the grave.
Yeah.
Influence, right? And not only cradle to the grave, not only have you been around it pretty much your entire life, it's probably generational as well. And so I think ecosystem is a really great, term, because I think within these ecosystems, morale, right, wrong, justice, unjust, I think all of that starts getting a little warped.
Yeah,
in
for
the
sure.
ecosystem. Does that make sense? So I think that's why it's so hard for us on the quote unquote outside to understand it. It doesn't make sense to us. But as you were talking about this, and it was like they had to travel 30 blocks, it always makes me wonder, is that why you have gangs? Is partially, like, is it bored kids who have big egos and not a lot of guidance? Or do you also have a security system, a protection for your own neighborhood? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
And
mean, I
you
imagine
protect,
that that's part of some of it. I mean, it's
like,
kind of like,
you protect better, quote unquote, better than law enforcement within that grid.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are gangs out there where part of their mission is protecting their neighborhood, their families, and their people. You know what I mean? And the reason that they do murder other rival members is because they're a threat to their neighborhood, their community in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that that's a component to it, right?
So all of that rambling to say, yes. Like, yes, these kids obviously know what they're doing, the fact that they feel remorse, but at the same time, I again will die on that hill. I think it's child abuse, I think it's grooming, and I think there's a lot more to these situations than we like to give credit.
I'm with you. I think we could all stand to be more educated on the ins and outs of it, right? So after the trial and the conclusion, in the end, Lamar McKnight and Darnell Houston were convicted of first-degree murder for the murder of Kashmier James and the attempted murder of DeAndre Woods. Video and audio recordings of witness X's interviews were played for the jury, which also received written transcripts. The chilling transcripts were presented to the jury, also revealing Darnell Houston's unflinching admission of his role in Kashmir James's murder and how he showed no remorse in dismissing her as a tramp associate, just kind of laughing about it. Houston's conversations with witness X revealed a chilling, unapologetic glimpse into his mindset, one that was firmly rooted in the violent culture of the 111 neighborhood Crips. Darnell Houston didn't hesitate to recount his past criminal activities, demonstrating his unwavering commitment to his gang and its brutal ethos. At their sentencing in October of 2015, the men had to listen to victim impact statements. Kashmir's mother, Kim Evans, said words could not really explain the hurt that her daughter's killing had caused. She said, quote, "You participated in this and nothing can ever change the damage you did. You and your crew left her in the street to bleed to death in front of her daughter, all because you guys wanted to make a name for your hood. All because you wanted to be in a gang, a senseless gang. You took a life away. I want you to remember her face and know why you are sitting in that jail cell." Even more powerful was Kashmir's now 8-year-old daughter, Nevaeh Jackson, and she shared her victim impact statement. She started by asking the three men, "Why have you not said you're sorry for taking my mommy away from me? My mommy was the love of my life. My mommy was the love of my life. I remember that night and it scares me. You're supposed to love people, not hurt them and kill them. You are mean, evil people." Oh, for an
Amen.
8-year-old to get up and say that to these guys who killed her mother.
Amen, baby girl. Amen.
Oh, this one just gets me, Chelsea. I don't know why this one bothers me so bad. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Kathleen Kennedy called James's killing a really, really horrific crime. She said Christmas is supposed to be one of the happiest days, especially for a child. But instead, this was probably the saddest day of this child's life. What a horrible thing to do to a child on Christmas.
Yeah. And will be for the next however many years that she is alive. And when she has
Noted.
her own family, they're going to be like, Mommy, why are you always sad on Christmas? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
crazy.
Generational trauma.
Yeah.
The judge noted that Kashmir was an innocent woman who had a right to be on the streets of Los Angeles on Christmas night. It's so senseless and so tragic. And with that, she sentenced 38-year-old Darnell Houston, who fired the fatal shots, and 28-year-old Lamar McKnight, the getaway driver, to life without parole.
Yeah.
Derek Williams, who was just 15 years old at the time, was sentenced to 40 years to life due to his status as a juvenile.
Yeah.
Now, just as a quick side note, Derek Williams, his first-degree murder conviction was reversed. The appeal was reversed in 2018, saying that he needed to potentially be tried, I think, for a lesser crime, or potentially should have been tried for as a juvenile at the time.
Right. Right.
But I couldn't really find what ended up from that. I think he was still convicted, I just don't know for what. And the last piece of this, on a positive, Chelsea, you're gonna love this so much because this is the stuff you love. Kashmir James's mama, Kimmolita Evans, or Miss Kim, has said that these men may have killed my daughter, but they will never take away her memory. Kashmir's family, especially driven by Kim Evans, her mom, launched the Kashmir James Foundation to save troubled youth. The foundation is working to partner with schools in South LA. She said their mission is to give back and take back our communities by providing the resources to at-risk youth, low low-income families, and elderly care. The foundation will be going into schools, making contacts with the school district to allow the staff of the foundation to work with the youth that may be facing expulsion or suspension. In working with our foundation, this will allow the youth to stay in school, but be put under strict contact for 6 months so they can perform community services, attend mentoring on the weekends, counseling sessions, get tutoring, and Scared Straight programs upon completion.
Yeah.
Kashmir James Foundation's mission is that all lives matter, and we have to restore, reclaim, rebuild our youth and communities. And she puts, according to her daughter, another day always brings another way. Whew.
Yeah. A really good friend of mine, we have had multiple conversations over the past couple of months on she has gone through a phase where she has mentioned that she has come to the realization, and it's been a very difficult realization for her. And there have been a lot of things in her personal life that have kind of cropped up, and it's kind of brought this aha moment in her. And she was like, Chelsea, I always believed that if you worked really, really, really hard, that you could do anything. Like you could have this American dream, right? Like all you had to do was work really hard to do it. And she was
Yeah.
like, and I'm starting to see situations in which that's just not true. And it's kind of like shattering this, core innocence almost that she has, even as an adult woman. And I just kept thinking about that, thinking about Kashmir, where it's like, if you work really, really hard and you go to school and you find a great partner, you're going to get out of these neighborhoods. You're going to make a better life for yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to go back and you're going to be encouraging to those neighborhoods to which you ultimately never get out of. Right? Like she ended up dying in that neighborhood. And I think that's, for me, that's part of the reason why this case is so sad. And thank goodness for that cherry on top, where it actually was a good cherry for me on top by the foundation that her mom started. But I think for so many of these members, you hear these stories, these community members, where it's like they are trying so hard to get out. They're just doing all the right things. They don't
Yeah.
want that life. They don't want to perpetuate it. They don't want their kids to perpetuate it. Yet everything that they've tried to avoid literally is their demise. And that's what's so hard with these cases, because you can't work really hard. But luckily, somebody can in your honor. And it sounds to me that that is what her mama is doing, like in her honor and in her name. She's making sure that the other kids are going to get out, even if
Yeah.
her daughter ultimately didn't.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Like, this case is just so horrific to me because she did everything she was supposed to do.
Yeah.
She did everything right, right? She had a good partner, it was a good relationship, she had a 3-year-old, she was a great mom, she got her nursing degree, her mom's a nurse, and she literally stops by a friend's house to say Merry Christmas,
Yeah.
like, "Nice to see you, let's do our 5 minutes of catch up," and gets gunned down in the street because of these people, and that's a whole 'nother thing, but literally of a case of mistaken identity. They weren't
Yep.
even targeting him, it was the wrong guy, and she was literally just a bystander in all
Right.
of this.
Right.
And,
And don't
and it
kid
just makes
yourself.
me so mad.
And don't kid yourself. This is not just an LA problem, right? Like,
Oh, no.
this is
This is
a
all over.
anywhere you live, this is upper class, lower class, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, skin color. You know what I mean? Like, you can have those traps within every environment. But again, it's that dashing of hope, right? Like that cutting short of a
Yeah.
life that was so promising. And I have I think we've talked about it a bunch, but I am a mentor up at the high school, and I work with kids that are at risk for not graduating, right? Like that this program is aimed for. And they one of the local businesses is going to be they're starting this kind of video podcast, if you will, where they interview local businesses, they interview local members of the community to hear about what they do. And so the director, or the director of this chapter of Mentors Care, was asked to be on. And I asked him, I was like, hey, if you need somebody to come on and talk about mentoring in general, I would love to come on. And I was like, because I firmly believe the research that shows a kid needs 5 adults in their life to be successful.
Yeah.
Don't just need a mom and dad. They need a really good teacher. They need a great coach. They need a mentor. They need a youth minister. Like, they need somebody else. And so this
And if we don't
program,
do that for them, then these older men
right?
and these gangs fill that void for them.
That's exactly it. And so with Kimmolita,
Yeah. Kimmolita Kim.
And so with Kim starting this idea of like mentoring, I think that is literally the best thing at giving these kids a chance. I'm not saying it's a solution. There's no such thing as solutions to these problems, in my opinion, but it at least will give them a chance and give them an opportunity for a
Well, I
solution.
think it's a solution. It might not be the ultimate
Right.
fix of the problem, but there are lots of solutions.
Sure. And I think that's a better way to state it. I'm saying, meaning it's not going to fix all the problems by having a mentor
No,
program in a community. But
no.
let me tell you something, it will change at least one life, and that life will change someone else. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you got to move forward. You got to do better, man.
Yeah. And you guys make sure to pop over to our Instagram. And this woman, Chelsea Kashmir, was beautiful. She could have been a model. She was beautiful. Her daughter's beautiful. Like her, she, I just her face is like ingrained. Oh man, this one just bothers me. So that is the really sad, really unfortunate Christmas episode of the murder of Kashmir James, a beautiful human who was literally in the line of saving lives when hers was taken because of violence in a gang and
Yeah,
ignorance and
because
ego.
of ignorance.
So you guys hug your loved ones tight this Christmas. Make sure that you give them a hug and a kiss upon the cheek,
Yeah.
and make sure to tell them that you love them.
Yeah. And you know what? If you're needing a New Year's resolution for 2025, maybe think about mentoring. There are a
Yeah,
lot of
mentor these
communities.
kids, man.
There are a lot of communities. And like I said, it is shame on you if you think that it's only the streets of LA that has kids that are needing guidance and needing love. It is
Yeah,
right down the street from you. It is your next door neighbor. It is
right around the corner from
community.
you.
It's in
Yep.
your school district. So if you're needing advice, if you're needing an idea for a 2025 New Year's resolution, this might be the year to mentor.
Yep. And I'll put the Kashmir James Foundation link, like the information in the show notes. If you guys want to give a little bit of a donation to Miss Evans's foundation and what she does for these kids, at least in the LA area, I mean, that's the least we could do in honor of Kashmir.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea as well.
All right. Well,
I think that's a
as
great
always,
way to end the new year. Like you said, hug your babies, hug your babies, hug your loved ones. And as always, we will catch you on the wild side.
Merry Christmas.
And a happy new year, you filthy animals.
Bye, guys.
Later, gators.
Hey, Wildside Tribe, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Wildside Podcast. Make sure to tune in on Wildside Wednesdays. New episodes will drop each Wednesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We would love to hear from you, so if you have a wild case recommendation, email us at wildsidepodcast@gmail.com. That's wildside with a C. Or share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you haven't heard it today, you're loved, you're worthy, and you're valuable. And we'll catch you on the flip side.